Cryptic Writings was in the mix because it was obviously we never made a new metal record, but we just did us. Played the game, but threaded the needle, I think would be probably the best way to approach Cryptic Writings.
What spurred this whole conversation was Dave Mustaine coming out saying that thank God that genre went away. So I mean, even not even dead, like went away. And as a, as as I send you photos from a Deftones concert that was, sold
Yeah.
out, that
And then
yeah,
I see an advertisement they're going on tour with Disturbed.
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here's David and Joshua.
this is the first episode we've recorded since the podcast has debuted, and I just want to say, honestly, the comments on the YouTube, the comments I've been, get the DMs, all that stuff that I've been getting, man, all positive. It's been very refreshing putting out stuff and having so much kind of love kind of coming back at it. So I just want to, thanks to everybody that's checking out the show, meeting me for the first time, but obviously growing up, listening to David everybody's whole life. This has been a blast. Everybody's good questions in the comments. Keep them coming because I'm keeping track of those, and we'll do a kind of an AMA type episode soon with David and some of those questions. But yeah,
That's
it's
a good
for the
idea.
most part, it's been awesome.
Hey, I forgot to. Yeah, that's super awesome, and thank you everybody for that. Because again, we just started this kind of on a wing and a prayer.
Yeah.
Just a quick wrap. It was like kind of a closing. As we closed up our podcast back in January, the you interviewed me for, and then life moved on. But because I've had some people say that it's like, well, you shouldn't do too much, and it's like, in what fucking universe is that? I mean, there's a friend of mine yesterday. He said, "Dude, you're the ultimate rock and roll journeyman." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and that's and I love that. Because it's why not? What I mean, I can't come up with any good reason to just. This is what we do, man. Music is always out here somewhere, so we go out there. That's what we do. We're troubadours, man. And in fact, tomorrow, me and Drew Fortier, guitarist from Lucid, we worked on remixing a cover of Cheap Trick, the song "Downed" off the In Color record. We're putting that out. We recorded it back when we recorded the first Lucid record, and it was put out as sort of a hidden bonus track on the Ellefson cover record. So I always felt like it was too good of a song to just be a sort of a throwaway track. So we're actually putting that out tomorrow. So that should be out by the time this episode goes up. And hope everybody like it. Chip, we're calling it Ellefson's Enough because it's Chip's Enough and me. So Ellefson's Enough.
Ellefson's Enough.
Drew comes up with funny shit like that. So Ellefson's Enough.
Too fun.
And of course, he sang on the Donny Iris song Aaliyah that we put out back in December. So that one's going to be cool, man. Of course, Cheap Trick, Big Heroes in mind. So it's fun. Just keep making music, man. That's what we do.
Still touring around the world and trying to do a podcast. Where the is David Ellefson?
Well, let's talk about the Bass Warriors tour, man. How you've got basically, as we record, you have one show left. So I mean, how have these shows gone? I mean, the videos have been fun. Some of the environments maybe aren't as conducive to thrash metal as others, but it looks like it's been a blast.
Well, look, I came over here a year ago. I was going to do the first one 2 years ago, and then we ended up doing the Kings of Thrash tour in February into March. What was that, 23? So I came over last year in March, and we did the first one. And that one was pretty extensive. It was pretty long, actually, and covered a lot of territory. I didn't do as many dates on this one because I was just here back in November with Kings of Thrash and Diets. We kind of covered some of those cities, and you can't come back too many times. So we kind of worked around that a little bit. But a new set list. Andy Martingeli is great, man. I mean, he is just a powerhouse guitar player. He's a kick-ass dude, and he puts the band together. And, it's interesting because they're Italian guys. No one complains about money. They don't complain about any of the conditions of travel or hotel or, hey, we got 5 in a row or, there's, a long drive. No one complains. It's funny in America, everyone bitches about money. How come there's not more? What, you know, really, well, how long is the drive? And we got how many in a row? I got to sing how many shows in a row? It's like, fuck off, man. It's like, over here, yeah, these guys, and I was just talking to Keith St. John, who sang in Montrose with me. We were chatting this morning, and he goes, hey, I see you just played Louisiana, Austria. I'd never been there before. Velden, very rich area. They got like some big golf tournament that they do there. It's skiing. It's the well-to-do. It's down by kind of as a French Swiss feel to it. It's down in the
Yeah.
Alps and everything. And so that's what I love about it. I get to go to all these great cities I've never been to. Most people would never get to, right? And I just get to, enjoy the journey. And all the venues are anywhere between, you know, a couple hundred people to 1,000 seats, 700 seats, something like that. And to me, like my agent said, he goes, David, I can put you whatever size venue you want, but if only a couple hundred people are coming, that's what it is. And I say that, look, Gene Simmons just canceled his whole tour,
Yeah.
and, I didn't, and so I think it's important you play to the appropriate room, you play to, um, and I'll say that as a dig to Gene. I love Gene. Obviously, I saw him at Wacken last year. Coming. I mean, the Kiss pyro just barely cooled off, and he's already out basically playing Kiss songs. But I get it, man. I get the God of Thunder mentality. It's like, hey, what are you gonna do? Sit around the house, watch the paint dry? We go rock. That's what we do. So I love that about Gene. He got out. He was out fucking rocking and playing, and he's been doing it his whole life. What's he gonna do? Go home and sit? Oh, look, we read it in the Frank Bello episode, right? You
Yeah.
know, better to keep going. So I get it. I get Gene's mentality, but I think for me, I don't mind playing. Look, we started in intimate venues, right? Kings of Thrash, we play, smaller venues, 500 seat rooms and stuff, and that's where that music actually sounds better there. It was written for that size. As Megadeth got bigger, Killing Is My Business and Rattlehead didn't sound good in the big arenas, so that's a big reason why the sound of the band changed, is it almost changed to accommodate its own growth, and so to go back and play some of these songs, in a setting where you could look people and see the whites of their eyes in the front row, there's something compelling about it that I like, and I'm glad I get to do both. I get to be on big stages, and then when I go out and do my thing, it doesn't hurt my ego at all. I'm over all that crap, So to me, it's to go to frickin' Velden, Austria, and go back to Slovakia. I went to Slovakia. We went over there with Metallica in 1993. They had just become a country 6 months before. They had finally when they broke up Yugoslavia, and the Czech Republic. So I've been to a lot of these places right as they came out from under the Iron Curtain. And now to go there all these years later and see them thriving. Poland is out of control, with the growth and, as my agent told me, I guess they built a lot of those roads there with EU money when the Olympics were going there. So, for me, I love the history of all this stuff, So to me, it's more than just getting up on stage and playing some songs. I enjoy the whole day. I enjoy the journey, the drive, the company we have, the fact that we sit around and listen to Annihilator and Judas Priest records, and then we get on stage and, and we rock, man. We obviously we play some Megadeth songs. People like to hear that, but I play some deep cuts, a bunch of my own songs. There's one song we've been doing, If You Were God, that I did a demo of it. Me and my friend Pat Chunk, who was a friend of Nick Menzies, we wrote like a whole record of material, in 1993 when Megadeth was off tour. And, that's a song I actually brought it in for Euthanasia. It's the wrong cadence. As Max Norman said, he goes, no, it has kind of a Billy Idol groove to it. It was kind of the wrong tempo, the wrong cadence for what we were doing. But it's a great song. And on the original demo, John Bush sings on it. I had
nice.
John come over at 10 in the morning and he, frickin' opens
Crushed
his
it.
mouth and roars like a lion, at 10 and Bush at 10 a.m. even. He's awesome, just fucking rocks. And so I sing that one. We have another F5 song that I wrote all the music to, and Dale wrote the lyrics to it, called "Feel Your Pain." That was from about 2007. It
Nice.
started with a bass. I remember writing it in the rehearsal room one day. I just picked up a bass and just fell right out and wrote it, and we put it together as a band, of course. But so I'd sing that one. So it's nice to have a couple of tunes that I sing. Um, we Metal Gods, since we put that out with James Dermott, so we put that in the sets and some stuff like that. So
Any fan interaction that blows your mind? Anybody bringing out any cool old Megadeth stuff you haven't seen in years? Anything like that?
oh my God, when we played Mannheim a couple weeks ago, there was one of our VIP guys showed up. He got there a little late, and he came in with what looked like a box, like a box, like if you're a lawyer going to court, you open it and
Right.
it's just records that are right.
Right.
And I went, "You want me to sign all of those?" Okay, because that's what I do. I sign everything. I don't like the pants make $250 and they basically get to walk by you, take a picture, and
Right.
they're shoved out. I was part of that obviously a lot, and I want my experience to be different. I want to be able to bullshit, hang out, tell some stories,
Yeah.
sign whatever you got, whatever you have. So he did. And dude, this guy, I forgot most of these records I'd played on. I mean, this was some deep dive stuff. I was like, I played on that, even flip it over, go, oh my God, I did. All right, and sign that one. I mean, he probably had 20 records, 10 of which I probably forgot I even played on, from just various, things. There's this Night Fury record. There was a Malice song from the License to Kill record that me and Dave,
Oh yeah.
Jay Reynolds invited us down to sing background vocals. And Black and Blue, who were signed to Gene Simmons' label,
Yeah.
those guys, which included Tommy Thayer
Right.
of Kiss, he was in Black and Blue, and those guys, as I understand, sang uh, the backing vocals on a lot of the hair metal records. Like they were the team that went around
Right.
and sang on records. And so they were there. And so like there was one of those tracks. He goes, "Yeah, it's a Malice song." I'm like, "Oh my God." So, just a ton of these kind of things, like so that one was very cool. Sold a bunch of we blew through our stage use bases. Those went like that. So yeah, it's just been a super, super cool experience. Been a lot of fun. We put the She-Wolf coffee back up in the store.
Nice.
Pam created a super rad label for it. We've always used that roast for all of our cold brews and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, you know what? We haven't had the packages up there for a while. So created a new label and popped it back in there. So anybody looking for it's got cool light roast coffee. So and like I say, the packaging is rad. Can't wait to get one of them myself when I get back to the USA.
Gonna make some podcast coffee. Got to get that espresso roast for my family here.
Oh yeah. Hey, that's what we do. We can white label it.
There we go.
Yeah, it'll be white. It'll just say podcast.
There we go. Yeah, they're just like those old just says beer on it. Those little white cans that say beer on it.
Actually, I have some really great Base Warrior coffee out here.
Yeah.
We basically took the ad man, made a label out of it, in our guitar pick fashion. Because I have a roaster up in Coburg Coffee up in the UK, so they do all of our roasting over here. So I thought, yeah, this is cool. They're not, we did whole bean over here because it's funny. When you leave America, we're big on drip coffee. That's our thing. And the Japanese like it because, they're kind of into American things, right? But as soon as you leave America, nobody drinks drip coffee. Maybe England a little bit. But for the most part, it's all espressos and cappuccinos and Americanos and all that kind of stuff. So over here, we did whole bean only. Because most people are going to bring it home and grind it and,
Yeah.
do an espresso thing. Hey, so speaking of Metallica, I started watching their Masterclass,
Okay.
so it turns out Masterclass is actually a company, and they have all kinds of different things they talk about on there, right? So I saw Alicia Keys did one, but they've got for all different industries, a whole bunch of different industries. It's not just music. So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know when they did this, but I've been watching it, and you know, it's funny. They're all for talking about things. They do a really great breakdown of a couple songs like Master of Puppets and Enter Sandman, which as musicians we know. I mean, I always said, remember when me and Marty we were over in Europe, I guess, on the Countdown tour, and we were watching the year and a half in the life of Metallica.
Right.
And me and Marty just go, dude, we're all in the same band. Like we days off, we go guitar shop, right? We're tired here, trying to make a record, trying to record. It's like we could be in the exact same band. And I think we're all basically in the same band. So that's what I thought was kind of cool about the master class. And it's funny about, everything that I learned in life. And then was that book, everything we needed to know in life we learned in kindergarten, look both ways, hold hands when crossing
Right.
the street. Everything I learned in life I learned from being in a band, and so it's like I think the takeaway is most of this stuff is, like James had a great quote. He says, "You face yourself through the other guys." And I thought that was really interesting about how, your own personality reflects back through your bandmates, right? You kind of see yourself, what you like in them, what you dislike in them. There's some really good stuff in there about how to get along. And of course, this is the band that, made a movie about their
Right.
band falling apart, and recovering from that, of course. And, that's, they talk about that when they brought their coach and I always joke with that because our manager hired one of those guys. He was more of like a sober counselor to get me and Dave clean in 1989 and get me and Dave and Nick and Marty in a room and how to work together as a band and commute. But most of it was communication, and that was a big thing that they talk about pretty much exclusively. Robert Trujillo had a really good one about what kills creativity. I made some notes here about it, and he, didn't say what kills talents because nothing kills talents, but what kills the creativity, that whole thing. And like we've talked about this, what going through, Megadeth, the years when we were, I mean, look at the 90s, our most prolific years of certainly our one lineup, uh, consecutively successful albums that were all unique, different, competitive, kept the band in the game during a very challenging decade because, Rust in Peace was just our time, right?
Yeah.
And that was all our sort of coming out of the 80s. This is as good as thrash is gonna get. I remember feeling that on Clash of the Titans. And then going into Countdown going, okay, it's time to step up. Everybody needs to raise their game, which we did collectively. And then, even Euthanasia, it's like, all right, now we just came off this big cycle. What's the next step? And, of course, Metallica was always kind of a cycle ahead of us. Now they're cutting their hair, they're doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, Metallica was sort of able to sort of tip their hand a little bit to like, yeah, this is what's coming down the pike, and they were always there to walk through the door first, But I like another quote that James had. He said, "Writing music is not a math problem." And I thought that was very interesting because, with Dave, he thought very mathematically about music, which always kind of frustrated me because I hated math. I'm not bad at it, but I was like, oh my God, please don't make me go to
I'm here to
math
play
class.
music. I'm not here to do
The whole
arithmetic.
reason I'm in a band is not to go to math class. So I thought that was interesting. But there are two different ways about composing, right? There is and some people think linear like that. They sort of, I admire it, I will say, because it's not how I think. So when I see someone create like that, I go, all right, I guess, you know, it's it's like using algorithms to fall in love or something. You know what I mean? It's like, wait a minute, how does this work? How could there be a mathematical thing? I mean, look, I guess all of life is math in one sense, right? Because you theoretically can put math around the weather, you can put math around light, sound, you can apply math to everything in some way, I guess. So it's just not how I ever did it. it was not my thing. So I thought that was an interesting, and I don't mean to give away all the quotes here, but I thought there was some really great stuff in it. There's something really good in there about, Lars talks about, this idea that somehow these brilliant movies and art and music just sort of happen. And he said, and I liked his approach on it was, you know, it's really more about just clocking in and going to work, and like go to the studio at 10 a.m. and be in the room for 8 hours together and write songs, I never understood that attitude, lots of times, like when I was working at PV, especially, I'd follow up with some of my artists and say, "What are you guys doing?" "Oh, we're writing this month." I'm like, "How do you write in a month? Like make an album in a month, right?"
Right.
Yeah, I remember, we would do that with Megadeth. In fact, Cryptic Writings in particular, because I remember my son was born and it was very sleepless around the house, right? When you've got a newborn,
Oh yeah.
anybody who's got kids, as you know. And it was interesting that by finally setting, she was born in February, so we must have started maybe April 1st or something. I remember I had a few weeks, uh, paternity leave, right? And then we started writing Cryptic Writings. And that was what it was. It was like, hey, every day at 10 a.m. we rode in Phoenix because me and Maury and Dave lived there. We flew Nick in. But I remember every day we would go in from 10 a.m., till 6 p.m. or so, and we would put in an 8-hour day, 5 days a week, and we took weekends off. And that's how we wrote the record. We wrote a lot of great stuff.
Oh yeah.
In fact, even The Right to Go Insane was a song we wrote then. It wasn't titled that, but we had the music. So when I went back to Megadeth in 2010 and we had to shoot a music video for that song, I listened to it. I went, "Oh my God, I know this song." I fucking wrote this is easy.
Yeah.
But, it was, there is that, I think. I don't know. What's your experience with that? I mean, it's as far
It-
as the writing process and creativity.
it's funny when I was my pre-primer band, I was fresh out of I was actually in high school when I joined the band. They were all a couple years older than me. And we were practice every day, 3, 4, 5 days a week, all the, constantly. Like we know, nobody can call out of practice, like no matter what you're doing in life between this hour and this hour, we're gonna, get 2 hours of rehearsal in. We're gonna get in the room together, we're gonna jam some riffs together, we're
Were
gonna
you rehearsing or were you writing?
both. I mean, I don't think we ever had like writing sessions. It was always like somebody would show up maybe early to practice and kind of, be playing a riff when you show up and you're like, what is that? Let's work on that
Right.
riff, or, just kind of I always like those riffs that kind of come out of like, what are you playing right there? Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get a tone in my amp, like, we'll play that
Yeah.
again, like those riffs. But
I was the guy that would do that a lot. I remember when we were in Rome, right? We're on euthanasia, it would have
yeah,
been. And we would write at sound check, right? And always have front of house sound man, we'd say, "Hey, turn on and record this riff." We'd always would take a good half hour or so
yeah,
after we got tone set and write. That was the thing, right? And the same thing, I remember like pointing out that, Dave, he was jamming on something. I was like, "Oh," I said, "That's fucking cool." So we started jamming on it. We put it together. We
yeah,
recorded it. And I told him afterwards, I said, "Dude, that's a great fucking riff, man." And I don't even remember what it was. I assume it probably went on Cryptic Writing somewhere. But I just remember, I literally, I remember looking out and like the janitor sweeping the floors, looking up, rocking out, the lady
right,
pouring the popcorn in the popcorn machine was like rocking out. So, so I get what you mean. There's these, so that's the thing. There's these creative moments that happen. Every Monday's not going to be a hit song, but every once in a while there'll be just, "Oh, dude, what is that you're playing? That's rad." And
yeah.
then everybody jumps in and it turns into something, right?
Yeah, it's always something. It's funny. Is I actually watched the Megadeth Behind the Music the other day, and you actually talk about that in there. You're like, we would go outside, we would play basketball, come in, write Sweating Bullets. Go outside, play basketball, come inside, write Symphony of Destruction. It's just like
Yeah.
just kind of being in the moment, active. Just kind of getting the creative juices going, stuff like that. And but yeah, I mean it's funny you brought that up.
Yeah, well, look, and back in that era in Megadeth, things were collaborative.
Yeah,
They are now. They weren't. And for well, I was back at the band; those days were long gone. You know, Drover used to tell me that. He go, "Yeah, dude, those days are long gone. That's not how it works anymore, you know." But
Actually funny talking about the Sweating Bullets riff. It's so obviously now it's iconic, the whole like "Hello Me, Meet the Real Me" and all, like the whole that song is kind of, stood the test of time with Megadeth. But I mean it's old school rock and roll. It's just kind of like, oh, it's like almost like a Chuck
yeah.
Berry riff or something. It's
Well, I
crazy
remember
looking
when
back at
Dave
it.
called me up one morning, we were getting ready to go in the studio. In fact, we might have already been in the studio with Max Norman. This would have been early. This is either the last phase of the writing, which was the end of 1991. As we were rehearsing every day. Max Norman was starting to come down, take notes. Um, it was either then or we were already in the studio starting to record. And Dave called me up. "You check this out," and he read it. "Hello, meet the real me." He read it down, and I went, "All right, something's not right here." You know, I
Right.
was like, "What's going on?" And but it was like as you read it down, I was like, "Dude, is he high? What's going on here?" You know, is he off the wagon? What's happened? But it was fucking great,
Yeah.
and in a way, kind of almost an addiction lyric. Like "Hello, me, meet the real me," right? Like which one's the me, right? And this sort of mirroring yourself, and I just went. It's like, fuck, dude, that is great. Kind of like when he sells Badoo's buying. It's like, dude, that is, and that was great. And there's those moments like that where sometimes I don't know. My experience is some of the greatest songs just kind of write themselves like that. You just have to be either in the room or with an instrument nearby, or you got to be present for that moment to
Yeah.
happen. And sometimes then it just channels right through, and there it is.
It's funny in Peace Cells, obviously as a kid, 11, 12, 13, some of those lyrics don't really resonate. The older I get, the more I'm like, what do you mean I don't pay my bills? Why do you think I'm broke? I'm like,
It's kinda like Bugs Bunny. When you're a kid, it meant one
right,
thing. Then you get a little older, you're like, "Wait a minute, this is adult humor." Like,
right.
they crossed all genres and age groups, You know, as we were talking this week, thrash was, like, the only genre that kinda has its 4 founding fathers. Are there 4 founding fathers of nu metal?
Yeah, I mean, we've debated this for years on, my podcast, other podcasts. There's always the big three, which I would say is Corn, Limp Bizkit. And then you've got, that fourth spot is always up for debate. System of a Down, Slipknot, Linkin Park,
So
obviously.
wait, Korn, who we took out on the Euthanasia tour in 1995. You were at that show, right? Because that
Uh,
was the one where you had to bring you had to bring a can of food,
no,
right?
I did not. The show I saw with you guys was with COC. But yeah,
Okay.
that was like we had all got into Corn, and we're like, dude, they're going on tour with Fear Factory and Megadeth. This is awesome. We were like totally pumped for that tour, and like that was their kind of their first big break tour. I think they toured before that, but like that was the first big one that we had heard of.
Right, right. So, because I remember, back then we would get bands that would submit, before that, Stone Temple Pilots. I remember, they would send us CDs. Management would send CDs out and say, "Hey, these are some bands for consideration for the next leg of the tour." Right? We're just thinking as fans, okay, what is this? And then management, every band, you talk about buy-ons, right? Every did the buy-on bands, right? And so Megadeth never took cash as a buy-on, but every band bought on in some way. Like, hey, we're going to do ticket buys. The record label would do ticket buys. The band has a new record out, a new single. We're going to be at radio. We're buying ads, for the position on the radio charts, etc. So there was always this ancillary stuff, um, you know, that would make it happen. I mean, because you always go, why is this fucking band always on all these festivals? Why is this one band always, well, because they bought on, and then they ratchet their way up to the top until hopefully they get enough fans of their own, and then they stand on their own. So like Korn, I remember getting that CD and going, okay, this sounds very weird. And I remember it was a weird transition because I don't even remember what the other CDs were, but none of them were of sort of a genre that we would kind of pick, so to speak. It wasn't like, oh yeah, this is a great rock band. They were all kind of a new flavor. We went with Korn. They were management said, look, we think this is the one. Immortal Records is really pushing for this one. Their new label. This is their new signing, blah, blah, blah. So, all those things. So we took them out. We took out Cold Chamber. That was probably on Cryptic Writings record, another album and cycle later. Godsmack opened for us. We had them out as a support in the UK. And then ironically, in 1999, a few months later, they played right before us at Woodstock. And I was like, holy shit, man, these guys have stepped up their game. I mean, they were crushing, right? And then, I remember being on Ozfest with Limp Bizkit. They were playing right before us, Tools right after us. So that was a weird, modern rock sandwich, if there ever was one, with us crashers in between. And, Linkin Park comes along. And as I've said, Linkin Park was a band that I understood why people liked them, but it wasn't my thing. I love them now with the new singer. I think is super cool.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing them. And of course, Slipknot, when they came out, they were pretty roaring out of the gate, really the leaders of the masked band movement. And I know there were other masked bands around, Mushroom Head, but Slipknot certainly, kind of took that. You made an interesting comment. Nu metal isn't so much a genre, it was an era, right?
Well,
right?
you look at bands like Static X is a new metal band, Limp Bizkit is a new metal band. It's like, like they don't sound anything alike, but they're like of an era and
I remember
of an
taking
ilk.
Static X out. I really liked them. I thought they had a
Yeah.
cool sound. I loved the industrial thing that they had. Of course, I love Ministry. Trent Reznor, of course, even did a remix of Symphony of Destruction. I liked KMFDM's remix of Holy War is probably the best out of all those things that happened. Nine Inch Nails, I wouldn't consider them new metal, but yeah, the Static X were in that realm. And then of course, Disturbed comes out, and I wasn't so much in tune with like Down with Sickness, but I remember I was working on a record in Minneapolis for the singer Dale Steele, who would then join F5. And I was working late night studio. I go out to the car, I get in the car, and on comes Pray. I think that's the Disturbed song, right? From that second record.
I
This
guess
is
so.
the
That's
way I pray.
Disturbed is a
Yeah,
band I'm not a huge fan of. So
yeah, and it's funny. I like Disturbed. I mean, they always had two songs on every album that I liked. Like on
right.
that one, Pray and Open Up Your Mind, Motherfucker, or whatever that one was. I thought was cool. So, and then the next record, 10,000 Fists. In fact, I remember at that point, I had a band, Temple Brutality. We were a Jägermeister band. We actually opened. They were doing a Jaeger tour, and that was when I worked for Peavy. And Peavy, did a lot of sponsorship stuff with Jägermeister stuff. So I remember we were on. We did a couple shows with Disturbed in Florida, and I liked them. And I thought they were cool. And I was talking to Dan Donegan, and he said that they were very influenced by Megadeth
Oh
growing
yeah.
up. And then we had Johnny K. I brought him in to produce a couple Megadeth records. Our genre, the big four. I guess nu metal's probably the other one that sort of you could claim the founding father. So again, I would say Korn, Limp Bizkit, uh, Linkin Park, and Slipknot. Is that right? Or am I wrong
Well,
on
I'm always going to throw Deftones in there over a few of these, just because like for a moment it was Corn and Deftones, and then Limp Bizkit came along, and then
they were
then you
that
kind of
big? I mean, I know Deftones are popular because everybody seems to like them. It was not
yeah
my band,
yeah.
but they were that popular.
I always say so. I mean, they were the ones that kind of shunned the new metal tag for a very long time, and wouldn't tour with Corn, wouldn't do the new metal type shows. They were always kind of playing with. Every time we would go see them, they would be with Snapcase, and they would be with Quicksand, and just kind
Right,
of Glassjaw. Like they were always kind of bringing out bands that weren't necessarily in the ilk of new metal. They weren't taking out Cold Chamber, they weren't taking out Orgy
right,
and all those bands. They were kind of trying to stay away from that new metal tag, even though they kind of, when they those first couple records, spawned so many new metal bands, but they also spawned shoegaze bands and post grunge bands. I mean, there's so many. They're one of those bands that no matter the genre, people will be like, "Oh, I love Deftones." Like they're almost like a, I wouldn't say a musician's band, but they're like they're a band that multiple different genres can kind of be like, oh yeah, my influences are, you know, Tool, Deftones, Corn. Oh yeah, my influences are, the Goo Goo Dolls, Deftones, and like they could always kind of get
Well,
thrown into
how
a
about
weird.
POD? How about POD? Because they were in the mix, right? Would they be? I know they were kind of like a Christian metal
Oh
band,
yeah,
but
I mean they're
did that
totally.
sort of supersede new metal for them?
No, no, they were totally a new metal band. They were they
Yeah.
were they were right there, and I always joke about those guys. They were the only band to really prosper through 9/11 because of, you know, everybody else has put out doom and gloom songs, and they came out with the perfect record on 9/11 with, Youth of the Nation and all the classics off of that record that were kind of, alive. I mean, you can't hit the
That
nail on
was
the
what
head
came out
better.
on 9/11.
That album came out on 9/11. Yeah.
Dream Theater had an album come out on
Yep,
9/11.
so did Slayer. Slayer had God Hates Us All came out on 9/11.
That's my Slayer and POD singing
Yeah,
two different pages out of that book.
right?
That's funny. Okay, so look, Godsmack's on tour in Europe with POD, I believe,
Okay,
playing arenas. Slipknot was just here in arenas, coming back to Europe in arenas. Lincoln Park, fucking probably playing stadiums.
right.
Huge. And so is new metal dead? I would say not. It came out roaring, and look, it was the next thing in the '90s.
Yeah,
There was grunge and there was new metal. To me, those were the challenges as a thrash band that Megadeth that we faced. Cryptic writings sort of threaded the needle and got us through it. As we had a manager who said, with Risk, we zigged and the rest of the world zagged, meaning we went kind of lighter, more mainstream,
mhm.
but radio and the audience of the world was going heavier, more Godsmack, more Disturbed, more of that, right? Whereas we went to more, ours wasn't, Risk wasn't even radio rock. It was just too light, period, for what the market was doing, kind of we missed the mark on that one. Cryptic Writings was in the mix because it
Mhm.
was obviously, we never made a new metal record, but we just did us, and played the game but threaded the needle, I think would be probably the best way to approach Cryptic Writings.
What spurred this whole conversation was Dave Mustaine coming out saying that thank God that genre went away. So I mean, even not even dead, like went away. And as a,
Bigger than ever. Yeah, yeah.
as I send you photos from a Deftones concert that was,
Yeah,
sold
yeah.
out that
And then
yeah,
I see an advertisement they're going on tour with Disturbed. So, like, yeah, and we were just in fact, last tour I did with Megadeth in Europe was with Five Finger Death Punch. I would say Five Finger's a new metal band,
yeah,
right?
they're kind of a like a like a new metal band or something,
Yeah,
like
they're
a, like
kind
a
of like
newer metal
retro,
band.
yeah, new, yeah, new metal band. Yeah.
Yeah. What's wild about the whole new metal thing is that even last night was I went, my buddy, he's 50, I'm 45. We
Right.
walk into the place, it looked like the 90s. I mean, the kids, all the kids that were there were wearing big baggy pants, big baggy shirts, just this, it looked like we walked into a time warp. I was like, what is going on here, people? Like we did have a serious talk with all these kids in their fashion. But it's wild, the like I said, the older people, I think you had talked about it, the 20-year-olds or the teens and 20-year-olds are on the general admission, 40 and 50 are in the second tier, then you kind of, that's kind of how it went last night.
There's
But
like 30 years of it, right? It's like the new metal's like 30
yeah,
years old, right? 2020.
well,
We took Corn out in 95 and it's now
yeah,
2025, right? So that's,
that's great. I mean,
you
yeah,
know,
first Deftones was 95, first Corn was 94, the Fear Factory 95, demanufacture. So yeah,
okay, so
it's all,
yeah, I would say Fear Factory sits somewhere in there, right? Don't they
yeah.
sit somewhere in new
it-
metal?
I always, yeah, I mean, they kind of, they're kind of one of those bands to me that kind of helped create the sound, but then also adopted the sound, if that makes sense. Like almost like
Interesting.
Sepultura. Sepultura did that too. Sepultura with Chaos AD kind of put out the groove metal type stuff, and then it was like, you know, Sepultura begat Corn, who begat Sepultura Roots. Like that whole thing. So
Yeah, no, it's funny. Roots, no, you're right. You're right. They kind of all borrowed. You're right. Sepultura by the Roots album, that was a new metal record. I mean,
yeah,
and for me, I listen to it when I learn these songs, especially Sepultura, with Metal Legions or
yeah,
playing with Max Cavalera. the tuning is a kind of a dead giveaway. Suddenly, on a bass, or the B string, which was a
Yeah,
low string if you're playing thrash metal, almost not even allowed in thrash metal, right? Like
yeah,
everything was standard tuning, A440, 4-string bass, 6-string guitar. Well, suddenly the B string is the new E, right? And I
right.
remember even in F5 when I started, when that band came together, these guys, they're younger guys, 5, 10 years younger than me, and yet inspired by me, yet they influenced me on how to write some new sound and, doing the drop tuning, you take the E string, you drop it a step, and suddenly your finger goes to the same places, but new sounds come out. I'd be like, whoa, that's freaking cool.
Mhm.
And then I remember our second record, the guys walk in with 7-string guitars, and okay, now that's the new E string. And now I'm using my modulus bass on the B, and that's the new E. And it's a bitch of a frequency to get a tone out of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's one thing about just like thrash metal, our sound, our style, we, as I did artist relations for Petey, thrash metal sold through to the cash register at Guitar Center and Sam Ash and at the music stores, right? But if you gave one of us a signature instrument, they sell. My instruments sell, right? Guitars and guitar, bass is about 25% of what the guitar business does, right? So if you sell 100 guitars, a signature bass will sell 25, just to give a breakdown, right? So, but new metal, it's funny. We all knew Metallica was using Mesa Boogie amplifiers, right? And probably partly because they lived in the Bay Area where the company was from. But that began a new sound for them by Master Puppets. They were using that. Um, and maybe even on, I guess, Ride the Lightning. But you could hear kind of the influence of that sound. It gave Metallica a very unique sound. Well, but when we took Korn out, I remember they had all brand new Ibanez's and brand new Mesa backline, right? It's like they got the record advance and they went on and bought Ibanez, which, Ibanez to that point was a Joe Satriani, Steve Vai guitar, right?
Yeah.
It was melodic. It was that, Steve Vai had the handle, on his instruments. So suddenly, that one band using, Mesa and Ibanez literally changed
Oh,
the
yeah.
look of a music store. Suddenly, now that's what they have. I all had new metal, instruments, right? Everything was Ibanez and Boogie, almost exclusively, and I remember talking to Johnny K about that, what he used on the Disturbed records, because clearly he was using some rectifiers, Mesa rectifiers. That became the Mesa rectifier became the go-to new metal amp, whereas I grew up with Marshalls, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up with, Gibson Flying V's and Jackson and stuff like this. New metal was Ibanez, you know, almost exclusively. I mean, Lincoln Park, I mean, Limp Bizkit. I remember all these guys, they all had that. That was the go-to weapon of choice, was Ibanez and Mesa. So
The
how about you? I mean,
technology of
look, drummer 55, dude, you're in a new metal band. I mean, look,
right.
I'm talking to a new metal guy right now. So you would know.
Yeah, no, the thing even with Deftones today, the one thing that I took away from last night was I don't think they could have stayed what they were when they started because they I mean there has been an evolution of the band. They have, they have morphed into other things, but I think that when they played the old stuff, like all the old heads in the crowd were going crazy, but like I think that they I mean the set list was a absolute monster of a set list, by the way. Like it's all crushers. It was like, no, nothing off the new album, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's not the ballad off the new album, it was all just like banger after banger. But the thing with them, and you've talked about it with, being kind of a gearhead over the years, technology has helped bands like Deftones and a lot of the thrash bands, a lot of the new metal bands, but like with tone and getting those low notes, because Deftones are playing 8-string guitars now, and there's bands out there playing with so many strings and so many low notes, but you can dial in those notes now. But back when we started in the 90s, you were lucky if you could get a clean low sound out of a certain amps. And,
Yeah.
some of the thrash metal too, late, last few Testament records sound fucking amazing. Like
Right.
honestly, I think technology has made thrash so much better because there's so you can get those tones, you can pinpoint those chugs, you know what I'm saying? Rather than
Dude, I remember trying to buy a 5-string bass to record Hangar 18, and it was impossible. I went around with Mike Klink to all the music stores in the area in the valley, and
yeah,
they were all basically all set up for R&B and, for that kinda sound. It wasn't no
yeah,
one was out thrashing the hell out of a bass, so basically I just had to take my 4-string and tune it, do a drop beat in order to play Hangar
right.
18 and then stop and tune it up and punch in to play the rest of the song until I went to Jackson and basically invented a 5-string bass with them. So,
It,
but you're right. Try amplifiers, they weren't ever made to recreate that. Both the amps and the speakers, they couldn't recreate those low frequencies, and
yeah,
especially with the bass, it was really you're right. It was then, in the 90s, that was a real interesting era, and that's why probably, the Ibanez guitar for whatever its sound is, and certainly the Mesas, they could hold it together and sort of recreate that tone. I mean, look, I look at Fieldy's tone in those chord records. It's a big, huge California smile, as
yeah,
they call it in the graphic EQ, right? All lows, no mids, all top, and the new metal sound is all scooped mids. The whole band had this scooped mids tone to it, right? Which is great for drums. I mean, think about David was his name, right? The first drummer in
yeah.
Korn.
David
I
Silveria,
mean,
yeah.
think about him. He reinvented drumming,
Hmm.
right? I mean, he really did. That whole that fast,
Yeah.
snare roll thing on the fills. No more was like, you know what I mean? They
Right.
70s. It was no, it was that, you know what I mean? And I remember talking to Jimmy DeGrasso about that when we were doing Risk, about kind of trying to get on some of those modern fills, you know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't really our thing, but I remember experimenting with it. Like, okay, does that work with what we're doing? And it didn't really, but yeah, a lot of things change. And what is it? The old necessity is the mother of invention, right? So suddenly, all these companies started running to this. And you're right.
Yeah.
I think technology has created a better audio, for that kind of music. So and yeah, that's cool. I do like one thing I do like about Deftones is that it's like this made up name. I love names like that, like Aerosmith, Metallica, Deftones. And so they aren't really words in the
Right.
dictionary until you create them. I love that. I love those kind of
Oh
band
yeah. I
names.
mean, it didn't really hit me back then, but they've talked about over the years where people thought they were a ska band. I mean, it does sound pretty ridiculous as a band name, but that also goes to show you that band names mean nothing because we're seriously talking about bands called Corn, Deftones, and Limp Bizkit. you know,
I know, right? And Limp Bizkit is on a big arena tour. I mean, out of nowhere, it's like, holy shit, they're like
yeah.
killing it.
All right, so as the last question of the thing, so give me your definitive new metal big four.
So mine, okay. So for sure, Corn. To me, they're the Metallica, right?
All right.
They
Yeah.
started it all. They led the way. Um, I guess I'll go with Limp Bizkit. I mean, that makes sense. 1998, a couple years later. Um, I don't think they totally had the as big of a career as everyone else, but they're back out playing arenas. So and I like them. I think they're funny. I think they're cool. So let's go with that. Let's go with Corn, Limp Bizkit, Lincoln Park for sure, 100%. And then again, I would I would say I would say Slipknot would be in
Okay.
there. And again, how you got to go to the big six, right? You got Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, Anthrax, and
Right.
you got Overkill, Testament. You
Right.
Nuclear Assault. I would say Cold Chamber. Um, and to be honest with you, it's a hard press, man. If I didn't put Limp Bizkit in there, I would for sure put Godsmack in there, and I would put Disturbed in there, right?
Okay.
And those are not, and to me, in fact, maybe I should rewrite it. Corn, Disturbed, Godsmack, and Lincoln Park. because
Okay.
even Slipknot, as much as I almost feel like they're a different genre, as much as they're a new metal sound, they're kind of the Metallica of masked bands, right? So, I mean,
Right.
they're almost a whole other genre. They're the masked band, right? And they're the Kiss, I should say. Maybe that's their better description. They're the Kiss of uh of the
Oh,
masked
yeah,
band.
they were totally I've always said that they were my generation's Kiss, when they came
Yeah.
out, I mean, I remember going to shows when they were headlining small clubs and wondering if I was standing next to a guy in Slipknot because you just didn't know who they were, or you see him walking around backstage, you're like, "Is that a guy in Slipknot? Are
Yeah.
you in
Yeah,
Slipknot?"
so I'm gonna take Slipknot out of that. I'm gonna put Slipknot as Kiss of the masked band world.
Okay.
So to me, Korn, and God, I don't know, man. I mean, again, I'm just going from my own experience.
Yeah.
If I had to judge it based on my experience taking bands out, it would be Korn, Cold Chamber, Static X, and then again, then there's Linkin Park, Godsmack, Disturbed, who all
Yeah.
sit in this bucket. I mean, it's almost like a big five. So somewhere in there is the big four, big six of
So
new metal.
so just for the record, my big 4 is Korn, Deftones, Limp Bizkit, and my 4th will be System of a Down.
Yeah, I don't know, man. And I'm not disputing it with
No,
you, but System of a Down, again, based on your criteria, it was an era, not a genre.
right?
I think genre-wise, to me, System of a Down almost beat to their own drum. They were like
Oh,
some
yeah.
other, they were almost like Faith No More. Like when they came
Yeah.
out, they weren't part of thrash metal, but they had metal tones about them with this funk. Right there was like funk metal. That was like a genre for a minute,
Yeah,
right?
that was like a year, like 93, like in 92,
Yeah.
93. It was like this weird funk metal era.
Hey, how about Mudvayne? Would Mudvayne be in this running at all, or do
Mudvayne
they
could be
sit
in it,
over
yeah,
in the
yeah.
Slipknot generation? Slipknot, Mushroomhead, Mudvayne.
Yeah, they're in the mask band category. But yeah,
How about
see, like
Skill?
if you say
How
what's
about
that?
Skillet? How about Skillet?
Um, I would assume I maybe I don't know enough Skillet to really talk about. I've interviewed
Okay.
the singer once, but I don't know much about
Yeah.
him. See, if you say new metal, it's pretty well encompassing. Now, if you say like rap metal, then you're getting into like an actual definition of a genre where it's like, oh, that's Limp Bizkit, that's Papa Roach and Shovel and all those bands. But yeah, it's
See,
like,
that's kind of where I put Limp Bizkit. I put them over there
yeah,
into that, and God, Linkin Park kind of almost is in that, right? So
yeah,
again, that's why I guess for me, I think chronologically, year by year. That's why I go with Korn, Cold Chamber, Static X, um, and then like I say, next thing you know, it's Disturbed, and because
yeah.
Down with the Sickness, man. I mean, I don't know. That's again, that wasn't my Disturbed record, but pretty freaking huge. Put them on the map because they were on
Definitely.
an Ozfest, right, or Family Values or something.
Ozfest, definitely. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's what broke them. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Well,
cool.
yeah, I didn't come from the genre, so I have a big 6. You have a big 4. I have a big 4 plus.
You have a big 19.
Exactly. All right, brother. Well,
All
look,
right.
good to see you, and we'll catch up here again after the tour wraps and go from there.
Awesome. Well, all right. Well, you guys make sure to rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let your friends know about the David Ellefson show, and we will talk to you soon.
New metal's not dead.
The David Ellefson Show.